Dear students, the theme of our lecture is the interaction of language and translation. The plan is cultural translation, the first question, the second question, translation as the functional interaction of language, and the third question is idioms. Cultural translation is the practice of translation while respecting and showing cultural differences. This kind of translation solves some issues linked to culture, such as dialects, food, or architecture. Culture and intercultural competence and awareness that rise out of experience of culture are far more complex phenomena than it may seem to the translator. The more a translator is aware of complexities of differences between cultures, the better a translator will be. Cultural knowledge and cultural differences have been a major focus of translator training and translation theory for as long as either had been in existence. The main concern has traditionally been with words and phrases that are so heavily and exclusively grounded in one culture that they are almost impossible to translate into the terms of another. Long debate have been held over when to paraphrase, when to use the nearest local equivalent, when to coin a new word by translating literally, and when to transcribe. All these so-called untranslatable, cultural-bound words and phrases continue to fascinate translators and translation theorists. The meaning of culture is quite difficult to understand, therefore translation of cultures is certainly limited, all the more so borders exist between cultures which must be thus distinguished. This limit of translation of cultures was also explained in the theory of Edward Sapir, as you know, an American linguist and anthropologist. He said, "The worlds in which different societies live are distinct worlds, not merely the same world with different labels attached. Each linguistic community has its own perception of the world, which differs from that of other linguistic communities, implies the existence of different worlds determined by language." As you know, translation is a process and the result of turning a text from one language into another, which means expressing the same by the signs of a different language. In translation, we deal with two languages, and to verify the information they give us about the extralinguistic objects, we should consider extralinguistic situation and background information. Translation is the functional interaction of language. While translating, one must keep in view typological characteristics of both the languages, and remember that the same idea may be expressed lexically in one of them and grammatically in the other. One of the main demands upon a person translating any text is that he should be well acquainted with its subject matter. If all these principles are taken into consideration, there will be no danger of so-called literal translation, which means a word-for-word translation. This type of translation will, with all its seeming accuracy, ignores both linguistic and extralinguistic factors discussed above. It leads to preserving the meanings of separate words, and at the same time it distorts the meaning of the whole text, thus often creates an undesirable comic effect. And one of the difficulties which a translator may face is dealing with idioms. An idiom is an expression that is a term or phrase whose meaning cannot be deduced from the literal definitions and the arrangement of its parts, but refers instead to a figurative meaning that is known only through common use. Here you see the types of idioms. They are divided on the way they are built. Verb-based, the first type. The second, prepositional phrase. Then noun phrase, saying a proverb, fixed phrases, idiomatic phrasal verbs, or exclamations or short spoken phrases. Well, have a look at one of the examples in the next slide. Here you see a piece of cake, noun phrase, meaning something very easy to do. How was your test today? It was a piece of cake. If we paraphrase the answer, it will be, it was very easy. Now have a look at some idioms connected with food. For example, big cheese means an important person in a company or organization. Or couch potato means a lazy person who watches a great deal of television. There are a lot of animal idioms. For example, to have a bee in your bonnet means to be obsessed about something. Or the early bird catches the worm means that if you do something in a timely manner, you will succeed. There are also idioms connected with colors, so-called color idioms. Here you see the example of green idioms. To be green with envy means to be jealous. To be a greenhorn means to be untrained or naive. To have a green thumb means to have a talent for growing plants. To be green around the gills means to look ill. To be green means to be inexperienced. To give or get the green light means to give or get permission to start a project. So a translator should be very careful with culture-bound words while rendering the text from one language into another. Here you may find a lot of other examples of idioms. So that is all for today's lecture. Thank you for your attention, and I want you to be ready with seminar questions.